Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NoSilicast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, September 28th, 2025, and this is show number 1064. Last week, Nightwise joined me on Chit Chat Across the Pond, and in that discussion, we talked a little bit about presentation software, and I expressed my vehement dislike of both PowerPoint and Keynote. Longtime listener Andy Dolph has been listening at least since 2012 that we can document, and he said in a little audio comment about what I said, disparaging presentation software.
Hi, Allison. This is Andy from New Hampshire, and it's probably worth me saying that my background originally is in technical theater, and for the last 25 years has been in event production for a university, but it's very similar to corporate event production and so forth. You said something that in your conversation with Nightwise that I just had to respond to the point that I sat down at the microphone and here I am. And that was, you said that you kind of felt like PowerPoint and Keynote both are an abomination. And I 100% understand why you say that. And I think often the way that they're used is an abomination. But I also feel like it's sort of saying like, just because sometimes people use screwdrivers to, I don't know, injure someone in an attack or open paint cans or other things that they're really not appropriate for and it might go bad, that therefore screwdrivers are an abomination. I think that the way a lot of people use PowerPoint and Keynote is basically death by PowerPoint, and that is absolutely terrible. And I've seen a huge amount of absolutely terrible PowerPoint. However, I've also seen it used wonderfully, brilliantly, and totally appropriately to make incredibly effective presentations that are much more effective than they would be without the slides. Humans learn through all of our senses. And when we supplement auditory information from a speech with visual information, we're engaging a whole nother sensory system. And I think that that's really, really valuable and powerful. So what's the difference? I think that the single biggest problem that I see is that often, because PowerPoint slides often naturally take the form of an outline, basically what people do is write their speaking outline as a set of PowerPoint slides and then put that on the screen. And I think that's a huge mistake. Your speaking outline belongs on paper or on an iPad and not in front of your audience. What goes on the screen should be illustrations and punctuations of what you're saying. The presentation should be driven by the presenter and not by the PowerPoint. And when you think about it, kind of in the way I think about things as a theater designer, the questions that we're constantly asking ourselves and each other on a production team is, does this thing we're thinking about doing, no matter how cool it is, help to tell the story that we're telling? And does it move the needle on the communication? And when we approach presentation graphics in that way, where maybe I'm putting up an image behind the speaker as a sort of backdrop to what they're saying. Maybe it's a visual analogy or a chart that they're talking about but not reading. Or it's maybe a small number of words, maybe 6 or 8 at most, generally, on the whole slide. That's like one little phrase or a couple of points that I really, really want to punctuate and drive home. Or it's just a title page for the section of the presentation to remind people where we are in the structure. Those are all things that I think can be very, very effective. And so I want to encourage you to think about the tool as a tool, and that the tool isn't bad. It's the way that sometimes the tool is used, and often the tool is used badly. And when I speak, one of the questions I ask myself is, does having a slide presentation add anything to what I'm doing? And unless the answer is a clear and resounding yes, I don't use slides. Or if it's an event that really, really wants slides, then they get one nicely designed title page that just stays on the screen for the whole talk. I know a lot of my colleagues at the university on the faculty have found that students have started to demand slides because they find them useful as a note-taking tool, and that they want the slides to take notes on the lecture. And my answer to that is, that's not what slides should be for. If you want to give them a content outline that they can use as a structure for note-taking, by all means. But that's not what belongs on the screen. Maybe it belongs on their laptop or iPad, but not projected at the front of the room. So, just some quick thoughts off the top of my head about something that over years of doing this, I've gotten maybe a little bit passionate about. Where did this soapbox come from, and why am I standing on it? Oh, well.
So after Andy sent this in, he sent me another note saying that he hadn't heard all of the interview, and he later on heard us say much of what he had just said. I still love his perspective. I told him that I like his screwdriver analogy because I think it's actually perfect if you say it the other way around. Imagine you designed a tool to open paint cans, but almost everyone used it to turn screws. I think that's what's actually happening with charts. People, by and large, use them incorrectly and make them boring and terrible. I think Nightwise put it perfectly when he said something along the lines of, if your charts say what you're going to say, one of you is redundant, and only one of you can be an email attachment. Well, after Andy and I chatted a bit more via email, we decided it's high time for him to come on the show to tell us about his work because it sounds fascinating. We've talked about this for ages and ages and ages, but this time we've actually scheduled it in the new future, so we all have that to look forward to. This week, a woman on a user group message board I contribute to asked whether it was okay to update to iOS 26 or whether they should just apply the iOS 18.7 update and wait for a little longer for iOS 26. I advised her to wait, and I applauded her for noticing that there was a security update to 18.7. But some other people responded with basically saying, come on in, the water's fine. Now, don't get me wrong, iOS 26 isn't terrible, and I actually dig the new liquid glass interface. Sorry, Kaylee, I know it makes you physically ill, but I kind of like it. I love a fresh coat of paint, and I kind of enjoy the fun of discovery when developers move things around. The reason I suggest people wait is that I've run into quite a few bugs and poor decisions by Apple in iOS. although some of my friends say they haven't found any bugs at all. I thought I'd walk through just a few things that I've run across in the 2 days since this discussion occurred. First of all, I tried to open the TV app and it asked me for my Apple account password. I thought that was odd, but weirder yet, I couldn't switch to the 1Password app. I had to back out of the login screen, then open 1Password and copy the password. When I went back to the TV app, I tapped on my initials again, then on my name, and then the window popped up again, but it just blinked at me. Later on, I went back and I was able to access my content without any authentication request at all. I can't reproduce the error, but it was annoying nonetheless. Okay, here's another one. I took a photo with the camera app, and while holding the phone vertically, the preview of the image I was about to take flipped to landscape. I could not get it to flip back to portrait, even through repeated rotations of the phone. I ended up having to quit the camera app, and then go back in. I'm not talking about the selfie camera either, the thing that can let you take landscape or portrait images depending on the subjects in frame on the iPhone 17 Pro. This was all on the back camera. Again, it wasn't a showstopper, but it was buggy behavior. Now, the most annoying thing I've run across is probably not a bug, but rather, I think, a truly terrible choice on Apple's part. Many of my notification settings were changed when I upgraded to iOS 26. We have a lot of Eufy cameras in the house, and we have all of them in HomeKit. You can set HomeKit secure cameras to record and stream, or just stream, and you can have that mode change based on whether or not someone's home. We don't want them to record when we're home, as you can imagine, but we do like them to record when we're away. By default in HomeKit, each camera will tell you every time it changes mode from stream to record and stream, and then tell you again when it switches back. For us, that's 8 notifications when the last of us leaves the home. When we get back into the geofence region, all 8 of them tell us that they've switched back to just streaming. And when I say us, I mean that I get those 16 notifications when both of us leave the house, and so does Steve. Well, ages ago, I went painstakingly into each camera's settings in HomeKit, which is a lot of menu taps, and I turned off notifications of mode changes on all except one. I do like to know that they've changed mode, but I don't need to know 8 times when I leave and 8 times when I come back. After Steve and I upgraded to all the new 26 operating systems, Apple changed all of the cameras in HomeKit back to notifying us of mode changes. Now, I can't tell you whether this is iOS or macOS, and I don't know if it was one of my devices that changed it or one of Steve's that changed it, but they all changed in the Home app for both of us. So yet again, I had to select a camera, tap on the gear for settings, tap on status and notifications, toggle off status change notifications, tap back, tap the X to close that camera, and then select the next camera 7 extra times. The only good news is that only one of us has to change the setting back to what we had before, and then it affects notifications for both of us. Now, Apple also enabled audio readouts of notifications to my headphones. I absolutely never want this. I do like a tap on the wrist to see notifications on my Apple Watch, like telling me that the dining room Eufy has changed to record since I'm away, but I do not want to hear it. Before I spent that quality time with HomeKit putting the toggle back the way it was, 16 times on every walk, my podcast was being interrupted. The first time iOS 26 decided to read me a notification into my headphones, it was a spam text message that it had correctly filed under unknown senders. Why on earth would I want to hear that if I don't even want to read it? Finding out how to disable this feature was a real adventure. I looked in iOS settings, notifications, but it wasn't there. I was doing a workout, so I thought maybe it was related to that, but workout and activity don't have any audio notification settings. Guess where it is? No, really, guess. Not in a million years would I have found this one on my own. I confess that I had to take to AI to find it for me. It's in Settings, Apple Intelligence and Siri, Announced Notifications. In there, you'll find a toggle for announced notifications, but there are 2 sub-toggles, one for headphones and one for CarPlay. I don't want to announce notifications on headphones, but I do want them announced for CarPlay. Why on earth did they bury this in Apple Intelligence and Siri? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, they also re-enabled audio notifications on workouts, which I disabled years ago. I don't want to hear my split pace every mile and all that nonsense, but finding where to shut this one off was even harder. I looked under Apple Intelligence and Siri's announced notifications first, but it wasn't there. If you go to apps under the top level of settings, workouts aren't listed, so I didn't find it there. Under Settings, Notifications, Watch, there is an Announce Notifications, which I've turned on, but only for time-sensitive notifications. Pretty sure split pace is not time-sensitive. And they also forgot the hyphen between time and sensitive, which is just upsetting by itself. Okay, maybe it's in the Watch app on iPhone. There's a section for notifications, but it doesn't have anything about voice versus showing a notification on the watch screen. Activity within the Watch app does have allow notifications, but again, there's nothing about speaking them out loud into my headphones. Again, I resorted to asking AI, and I may have found it. In the Apple Watch app on iPhone, workout, voice feedback is on. Underneath it says Siri can read out your workout alerts. If this is turned off, Workout Buddy can still make announcements about your workouts. I've toggled it off, and fingers crossed, I think I've killed this new annoyance. Now, I later found the same toggle under Settings, App, Settings, Apps, Fitness, Announce Notifications. I had originally looked for workouts and activity. It's really helpful, that Apple has kind of 3 different names for essentially the same thing. Now, I would be surprised if Apple intentionally changed all of these notifications to defaults, overriding the intentional changes that I had made to them, and yet it also doesn't feel like a bug. Maybe there was some switch in the vast array of switches that someone forgot to set to leave this the way it was. All right. Search in the iOS Calendar app also seems to be struggling. I've tried to search for several things in the past and future that I can't seem to find, or it can't seem to find, I should say. For example, for every birthday I want to track, I have a repeating calendar event that says something like Teddy BD, and they all say BD in them in capital letters. It's probably 20 people I have as repeating calendar events with BD in the title of the calendar event. Searching for BD finds exactly 0 of them. Now, I know Apple limits how far forward and back it searches on iOS, but there's a birthday coming up in less than a month, and iOS Calendar cannot find it. I'm running macOS 26 as well, and Calendar easily finds the birthday entries on Tahoe. If I search for something like PBS, it finds all of my future programming by stealth recordings with Bart. I search for Peru because someone I know is going there, and that's in my calendar, but it couldn't find that either. I searched for CCATP, for Chit Chat Across the Pond, and it found my next scheduled time with Adam Engst. I haven't been able to find a pattern to what it can find. Now that I think about it, those are shared events, but the birthdays might be too. Anyway, I haven't been able to find a common thread between these and what it can't find. Intermittent problems are the worst because it's hard to report the bug if it is a bug. Now, breaking news. After I wrote this article, the lovely Norbert posted in our Slack that he had the same search problem in Calendar, but he solved it by turning it off and on again. But Settings, Apps, Calendar, toggled off Show Content in Search, and then he toggled it on again. And I have to say, this fixed iOS search for me too. I forget who posted a follow-up. There was somebody on Mastodon wrote back to me about this, and some people have been able to get this to fix it, and some people haven't. So it does look like it's a little more widespread and perhaps officially a bug. All right, let's see what's next. Oh, if I go into Find My and I look for any of my devices, there's a settings icon inviting me to tap it. I can tap it, but nothing happens. Steve tried it on his phone, and it doesn't do anything for him either. Now, it's possible this one isn't a bug. Probably not, actually. Because below the the settings gear and the word settings, it says erase and remove. So maybe this settings gear thingy is just a title for the 2 options below? If it's not a bug, I think it's bad UI, because everywhere else in the universe of Apple, when you see that gear, it means tap me. I'm going to take you to some settings. So I think it's poor UI. All right, my single favorite bug/feature of iOS 26 is a banner I keep getting at the top of my home screen on my phone that shows Steve's avatar, and it says he's connected. Connected to what? I don't know. I don't know what it's telling me he's connected to. If I tap on the banner, it opens Steve's contact card with no explanation. The only action I can take at this point is to select the Edit button for his contact card. Now, I should note that it appears to be Steve's contact card as seen on his phone, not mine. The font is different, and my version says Emergency Contact when I open it. I'm kind of tempted to edit something on it and seeing if it changes on his phone. Maybe not, but I don't know. It's still very confusing. But the biggest problem is if I do tap on the banner and I see his contact card, I can't get out of it. There's no back button, no close button, and I can't swipe down, up, left, or right to get out of that screen. The only way I can make it go away is to hit the power button on the phone. When I wake the phone up, the screen and the pop-up are both gone. Until the next time it happens. I think it's happened 3 times so far. I put the image of the pop-up into ChatGPT to see what it might be. It guessed that it was a proximity or sharing banner for AirDrop, NameDrop, or SharePlay. Not a bad guess, but all of those require you to have close proximity. This has been happening when Steve's on the other side of the house and downstairs and I'm upstairs, and he's not even touching his phone or his computer. The other problem is that I've seen AirDrop, NameDrop, and SharePlay banners before, and they don't look like this banner. Now, Richard Piazza responded on Mastodon to my request for ideas of what this might be. He asked if it might be Steve's phone connecting to my phone's hotspot. I used his phone to try to do that manually, and it created a pop-up on my phone showing his request, not the banner that I'm seeing that shows he's already connected. It remains a mystery, and I wish it would stop. The bottom line is that when I'm asked if it's okay to install iOS 26, I suggest waiting just a smidge until the weirdness slows down. It's not terrible, and so far I haven't had any permanent showstoppers, but to pretend it's a bug-free experience would be disingenuous. In December 2016, when the very first AirPods came out, Steve bought me a pair as a surprise. They work great, and I documented my excitement with an article entitled Apple AirPods, Bluetooth with Less Fiddling? In March 2019, I bought the second generation AirPods because why not? Well, just a few months later, in November of 2019, I upgraded to a pair of AirPods Pro. And in my article entitled AirPods Pro, Worthy Upgrade from AirPods 2? I was fairly bullish on the fit. And there's even a section in the article where Steve reports that he was able to wear the AirPods Pro without them falling out of his ears. I'm not quite sure why we were so confident that they were a great fit for both of us, because as time wore on, we both agreed that they did not stay in our ears, especially in Steve's. In February 2021, I tried the ChargeN Airfoam's Proactive Ear Tips, wrote an article about that too, to replace Apple's ear tips. They seemed to make me happy when I wrote the article, but eventually the AirPods Pro would still slowly squirt out of my ears. In March 2021, I tried adding the ChargeN rubber ear hooks, which worked well enough, but I had to take them on and off every time I put them in the charger, which got really tedious. Finally, in January 2022, I found the perfect solution. I replaced the AirPods Pro with the Beats Fit Pro. For over 3.5 years, the Beats Fit Pro have stayed in my ears because they have built-in flanges that keep the earbuds in my ears. Steve has a pair too, and they work great for him. I do find on occasion that sometimes the flanges wriggle a little bit loose, but it's pretty rare that the buds actually fall out, and I just kind of poke them back in. Now, each year when Apple announces they've improved AirPods Pro to fit more people's ears, I'm tempted to try them again. But up until this year, I've resisted that temptation. This year, they really sold me when they said, utilizing over 10,000 ear scans with more than 100,000 hours of user research, AirPods Pro 3 are the most secure and best-fitting AirPods ever. To deliver this improved fit for even more people, the internal architecture was completely re-engineered to make each AirPod smaller, while the external geometry of the ear tip was aligned to the center of the body for increased stability. A design informed by an unparalleled data set of more than 300 million points. And with new foam-infused ear tips that come in 5 sizes, including a new XXS size, AirPods Pro 3 deliver an exceptional in-ear fit. Now, you start talking center of gravity with me and you've got me hooked. I do feel a little bit like maybe I'm Charlie Brown with Lucy and the Football, but maybe this time they would fit and not squirt out of my ears. So, let's ask ourselves the correct question, though. What problem are you trying to solve, Allison? Well, I'm glad you asked. In no particular order. The Beats Fit Pro case is USB-C, but it doesn't have wireless charging. For the most part, that's not really an issue. When I go out for one of my endless walks, when I remove my earbuds, I charge the case via USB-C right where I take them off. I'm very good at habitual repetitive tasks, like putting out a podcast every single week for 20 years, so I very rarely find myself with uncharged headphones as a result. Now, when I'm on travel, I'm quite fond of the Anker Mag Go wireless charging station that Sandy reviewed for us, and that has MagSafe for iPhone, magnetic puck charging for the Apple Watch, and wireless charging for AirPods. If I had AirPods Pro, I could charge everything without hunting down another cable and charger for my headphones when I'm on travel. Not a huge deal, but a nice to have. All right, let's see. What's my next excuse for spending money? Noise cancellation is quite good on the Beats Fit Pro, but Apple sure made some big claims on how much better it is with AirPods Pro 3. There are those who would suggest that I shouldn't use noise cancellation when I'm walking, but where I live, ice cars, trucks, leaf blowers, weed whackers, and construction equipment are my constant companions. Now, people talk about the transparency mode on AirPods Pro as though it's magical. On Beats Fit Pro, I find it highly annoying. It's like having active noise cancellation, except then letting through the most annoying high-frequency sounds. I've wondered whether AirPods Pro have a completely different method of producing transparency mode. Now, AirPods Pro have been improved over the years to include cool features like lowering the volume when you start talking to someone and allowing more sound to come through and increasing volume when something louder is happening nearby. I wanted these new features. Let's see, I may not need live translation day to day, but Steve and I do travel quite a bit, so it could be useful on our trips. We've booked a trip to Finland next year and one to Spain, Portugal, and Ireland, so I may need this feature soon. I've also been very curious about the hearing aid feature in AirPods Pro, not because I have hearing loss, but because I'm curious about the technology. It bothers me that there's a stigma to wearing normal hearing aids as we age. Like, why isn't there the same stigma around wearing glasses? Any technology that makes it less expensive and more fashionable to have improved hearing is a win. Now, the new heart rate sensing from AirPods Pro 3 sounds pretty cool, but to be honest, I never move about without my Apple Watch, so I don't know, it'd be fun to test. Over the past 3.5 years, I've been kept hoping that these nifty new features would come to Beats Fit Pro, but in all that time, there hasn't been a single hardware or software update to them. All of these transparently obvious justifications caused me to buy yet another pair of AirPods Pro. All right, let's ask ourselves, how well do they fit? I've been wearing them on my daily long walks for a little over a week now, and so far I haven't had any problem with them staying in my ears. I hesitate to say that because I've lied to you so many times in the past, as documented earlier. When I first tried them on, they were a 100% no-go. I immediately swapped out the medium ear tips for the extra small tips. I found that if I really cram them in and then twist them so the stems point forward a bit away from my face, they do stay firmly in place. As of the time I wrote this, I've walked about 30 miles in the first 5 days I had them, and they've yet to fall out on a walk. I wore them on a plane ride too, and they were quite comfortable for the few hours I wore them. Now let's talk active noise cancellation. I had both my Beats Fit Pro and my shiny new AirPods Pro 3 on the plane ride back, and I figured this was a great opportunity to compare the active noise cancellation, or you'll see it written out as ANC. I swapped them back and forth a few times to judge each set's ability to cancel the tedious drone of the jet engines. I'd love to report back that the AirPods 3 were astonishingly better. But to be perfectly honest, I don't know, I couldn't really tell the difference. They're both good. And since they're both good, remember I reported about a year ago, both Steve and I find that the wired Bose headphones that we bought over a decade ago still did a better job of removing the plane noise on our long flights than the Beats Fit Pro. I wrote an article about that that's linked in the show notes as well. Now, we have another short trip planned in November. With any luck, I'll remember to pack all 3 sets and do a full comparison. By then, nobody but me is going to care, but I'm still curious to compare the different technologies. Now, let's talk wireless charging. I did get a chance to test out charging the AirPods 3 case while on travel using my Anker Mag Go charger thanks to Sandy. Steve and I travel so much, we've perfected packing of cables and other chargers. One that I don't leave home without is my beloved Retro 67 from Charge Geek with 3 USB-C ports and a tiny block that looks like a little original Mac. Now, wireless charging's never been a huge priority for me, but being able to just plug one cable into the Charge Geek Retro 67 and charge my iPhone, Apple Watch, and now my AirPods Pro 3 is pretty cool. Necessary? No, but the simplicity is appealing, especially for travel. Day to day, though, when I leave on my walks, there's a USB-C cable sitting right there ready to charge the case. However, before a recent walk, I was reaching for the USB-C cable and I realized I also had an Apple Watch charger puck sitting right next to it. I had some vague memory of hearing you could charge AirPods on the Apple Watch charger, and you know what? It worked. Might be just enough easier to slap the case down on the Apple Watch charger than it is to find the hole to plug in USB-C. Time will tell. Now let's talk live translation. My first experiment to test live translation was a complete failure. And I'm going to tell you the story because I had a fundamental misunderstanding of how it works. I called my friend and yours, Pat Dengler, on a FaceTime call, and I asked her to speak French to me. Yes, just like the original Addams Family's Gomez to Morticia. Speak French to me, chérie. Anyway, in the FaceTime interface in iOS 26, there's a translation button. But when I tapped it, nothing happened. Pat said when she tested live translation, she used AirPods Pro 3 earlier to listen to French President Macron speaking at the United Nations, and to do that, she used the standalone translation app to access live translation. While still on the FaceTime call with Pat, I launched the standalone translation app, but it wouldn't start translating. When I selected live translation, the interface would pop up on screen and instantly disappear. Well, I hung up on Pat and I opened a web browser to Patrick Béja's Le Rendezvous Tech podcast, and while I could clearly hear him speaking in French over the AirPods, opening live translation didn't work there either. I then found Macron's speech to the UN on YouTube, figuring she was able to do it with that one, and I heard him speaking French in my left ear and a woman's voice speaking English in my right ear. That was a little bit odd, so I removed the left AirPod and they gave me just the English translation in my right. I was very excited I'd figured out how this had worked. But you know what? I was suspicious. How could this be live translation? I hadn't done anything to invoke it, and the translation was so good and so fast. There should have been a delay, and this seemed instantaneous. I tested my theory that this wasn't live translation by speeding the video up to 2x. Sure enough, I could hear the translated English voice speaking just as rapidly as Macron in French. I suspect I've stumbled across a really cool YouTube feature where they pipe the translation to the right channel and the original to the left, and it had nothing to do with live translation. I explained to Steve how I wasn't able to get live translation to work, and he cracked the code. I bet most of you are yelling at your phones right now because you all know what I was doing wrong. In every test I ran, I was piping the audio into AirPods over Bluetooth. But Live Listen is designed to let you talk to a human in meat space and translate the audio to your language. That means live translation has to be listening to the microphones on the AirPods, not through Bluetooth. It took a bit of fiddling and a third device to be able to test this, but I finally heard and saw live translation in action. I connected my AirPods to my phone, but I played Patrick Béja's Le Rendezvous Tech from the speakers of my MacBook Air so the AirPods could hear it. On my iPhone, I launched live translation, selected French, and as soon as Patrick and his guests began to speak, I could hear the translation in English in my ears, as well as see the original French and the English translation on the iPhone. You can turn off the original language if you like and just see the translation. I'd call it a success, now that I understand how it works. The one thing that was disappointing was that live translation doesn't let you save the transcription of your conversation. As soon as you tell it to stop translating, it goes back to the start screen for the live translation app. Imagine you stopped someone and asked them for directions. They gave you this detailed set of instructions, and as soon as you walked away, the directions were gone. This seems like something they could and should add in the future. The only way I figured out how to save it was to start a video recording of my screen before starting the translation. I was talking to a friend of mine today, actually, and he travels to Japan often. His wife is Japanese, and he talked about how he's got these in-laws of his that he can't ever talk to because he doesn't speak Japanese very well. And they sat down a phone and turned on ChatGPT on the version where you get audio, and it translated. They were able to talk back and forth using ChatGPT. So I tested it with this gentleman's wife today, and it worked pretty well. She was kind of shy and wouldn't talk very much, so we didn't get a lot out of it. But I think if you want to get live translation, you can probably already do it with the paid version of ChatGPT on your iPhone. All right, got a couple little follow-up things at the end here. The Beats Fit Pro have one big advantage over AirPods Pro 3, and that's they have a physical button you push to play pause to do other functions. With the AirPods Pro 3, you have to squeeze to play pause. Now, you might want to ask why that's an important distinction. If I'm doing dishes or doing something else where my hands are not available to pause my headphones, with BeatFits Pro, I can easily tilt my head to one side and raise my shoulder up to push the button. Sounds like a clumsy gesture, but it's really quite easy. I do it all the time. Now, the case for AirPods Pro 3 is significantly smaller than the Beats Fit Pro case. I really like to keep my purse as minimalist as possible, so I appreciate the smaller size. The Beats Fit Pro case is much taller and thicker than the AirPods Pro case. I also appreciate that I can use Find My with the case for AirPods Pro. The earbuds themselves for Beats Fit Pro respond to Find My, but not the case. To be fair, losing a bud is more common than losing the case and the buds. When you first select your AirPods Pro 3 in Find My, it will show you the case, the left bud, and the right bud as 3 separate items to find. I selected one bud, and I got a notification pop-up that said it could only play sound if I turned on Bluetooth. Well, Bluetooth was already on, and my phone was already connected to the AirPods. I tried a few more times, and then it would at least try to play a sound from the selected bud. In repeated tests, I had inconsistent success in playing sound out of a single bud. The first time, it never worked. Just spun, telling me it would do it when it could find the device, which was sitting right next to me. The next time I tried, after many, many minutes, it did finally start working. In my final test, it worked immediately. I don't know if it was just having trouble finding them, and it wasn't until the last test that it actually knew where they were or what was going on. After all those tests trying to get the AirPod Pro 3's buds to make a sound, that sound is so quiet coming out of the earbuds, I'm not sure playing sound would be all that helpful anyway. If you dropped them on the desk next to you or maybe in the couch cushions, you'd be able to hear them. Overall, I recommend losing your AirPods Pro in the case rather than losing the individual buds because the case makes plenty of noise when you ping it. Within Find My for AirPods Pro, you have the option to declare your accessory as lost and have your phone number and a brief message displayed. Now, let's think about that. I know how that works on an iPhone or an iPad because they have a display. Where does it display it with AirPods Pro if somebody finds them? Maybe it pops up on the finder's phone? I don't know. Curiously, for both AirPods Pro and Beats Fit Pro in Find My, there's a settings button that doesn't do anything at all. I double-checked this on Steve's phone, also running iOS 26, and his settings button in Find My for its Beats Fit Pro doesn't do anything either. Maybe it's another one of these buttons that's not really a button? I don't know. Well, the bottom line is unclear. I'm tempted to say that I'll be switching to the AirPods Pro 3 from Beats Fit Pro, and that Apple have finally solved the fit problem for me. But you've heard me say that before, and I don't want to be a liar again. But I can say they fit me better than all of the previous models, and they're more comfortable than any of the previous models of AirPods Pro. The jury's still out on whether they're a better fit than Beats Fit Pro for me, but if I got to tell you, for now, I'm fairly happy. Except Beats Fit Pro come in this really pretty stone purple, and I really like it. I don't want them to be white. Maybe I'll get a skin or something to make it purple. Well, it's time to thank our longtime sponsors of the work we do here at the Podfeet Podcast. As you hear me list those who signed up through Patreon in 2022, close your eyes, well, unless you're driving or running, walking, or otherwise moving about, but close your eyes and imagine how warm and fuzzy you'll feel when your name is read out in the Hall of Fame after pledging at podfeet.com/Patreon. Okay, ready? Ready? Have that warm and fuzzy feeling? In 2022, we have Bill, Ed, Dex, Scott, Peter, and George. Thank you all so much for your support. Well, it's that time of the week again. It's time for Security Bits with Bart Bruce Schatz. How you doing today, Bart?
I am doing good. Even though it is October. No, not quite, but nearly. It's been a gorgeous day. I've been out on the bike. It's been lovely. So yay, while it lasts.
We are very excited to have discovered that we will never, in this particular time frame, go through 8 hours apart, 7 hours apart, 8 hours apart, like we normally do twice a year. We happen to just skip over it the way it works. So, yay, because it makes it hard.
Oh my God, it's hard enough to coordinate being 8 hours different, but when you throw in the whole wibbly wobbly, did you go to daylight savings time? Did we? Oh, God.
Which way did it go? Forward, back? Yeah.
Well, that too. Yeah.
Right. Well, we should get stuck in. We've got a brewery to go here down in San Diego, so we're gonna be brisk about our security bits. But then I'll probably ask a bunch of questions anyway and make it take forever.
Okay, well, let's have a go anyway. A few little follow-ups to things we've talked about before. A little trend, and not the good kind, has been that the baddies have been focusing on places you go to get reusable open source libraries to help you not have to reinvent every wheel, like NPM for us who are JavaScript people, or PyPy for people who love Python. GitHub are adding extra protections to people who manage their NPM stuff via GitHub. They're going to make it mandatory that if you're publishing to NPM through GitHub, you have two-factor authentication. So that is going to really raise the bar for a whole bunch of developers being attacked.
Oh, meaning it'll be harder to get them attacked?
Yes, or to succeed. They'll still try.
Okay. Right. That's like when people say, can you sue for that? Absolutely. Can you win? That's different. That's a different question altogether.
Yes, it is. The details are, of course, sparse, but it would be remiss of us not to mention that apparently there might be a TikTok deal, maybe. One half of the negotiation have said there is, without telling us much detail. The other half have said nothing. So
Yeah.
we shall see.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I also have
point.
I have my skeptic hat on a bit because they say one of the few things we know is that Oracle is going to have the right to oversee the algorithm. But I thought the whole point was the algorithm was supposed to be moved to American companies. So why are they overseeing something that's supposedly not going to stay with the Chinese part of the company? So I don't know.
Yeah. This is just one of those things. Like, just do it or don't. I love TikTok, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'll move on.
Yeah. But I did want to end the follow-ups on a happier note. If you are in Europe and you have an older device that can't do Windows 11 and you're getting do I go Linux? I think Linux Mint is being recommended, or what do I do? Do I buy a new computer? You can procrastinate in complete safety for another year. You get Windows 10, yes, in Europe only.
Oh, in Europe only? Okay.
Yes.
And it's free.
Yes. So Americans have some hoops to jump through. They're quite low hoops, but there are nonetheless hoops, whereas in Europe it's no hoops because we have laws that say you have to provide support for X amount of years. And there were people selling bargain basement laptops not 5 years ago.
Okay, right.
So they can't be left out. Yeah. Right. I call it a deep dive because that was the placeholder in the show notes. It's more of a paddle than a dive. But anyway, everyone has been, for very obvious reasons, obsessed with whether or not they hate liquid glass. Right. So Apple have updated all their operating systems, and the thing getting all of the air is whether liquid A** is how some people call it. Other people love it. It's all, hot take on liquid glass, which I don't care about.
Right.
I could take it or leave it. The liquid bit, I like actually the morphing UIs, but the glass, superficial, whatever. But anyway,
I kind of like it. But right. So what? Okay, moving on.
Yeah. What's more interesting and getting way less airtime is the fact that not only is there feature improvements, but there are also security improvements. And so we should look at those because that's the hat we like to have on. So by far the most meaningful update is that the very nice rethinking of parental controls Apple gave us a white paper on in the spring, promising it would come in the future and telling developers that they would have some more work to do before this was launched. Well, that has now had time to work out. Developers have spent the summer updating their metadata, and as part of being allowed to publish your app for the new OSs, you must now also adopt the new age ratings and the new, I'm going to call them nutrition labels because we haven't got a better word for these things, but there are basically family safety related fields now in the details of apps in the App Store. And that's all come with these new OSs.
So where we normally as adults look for, is it tracking my location or my contacts or something like that? There's age appropriate things too. Okay.
There is. So that's the biggest change. The other thing that's in there is Apple have changed their age ranges to be more fine-grained because they used to be like 12 all the way to 18 was one category.
That's not quite the same child.
Not quite, exactly. So there's a little bit more granularity. Apple's language for what developers needed to do to be allowed to use different age ratings was quite vague. That has all been tightened up. It's a lot more clear exactly what it means to be a 13-year-old app. And parents now have the option for a managed Apple ID, which I would strongly recommend parents have, because managed Apple IDs is how you get parental controls, right? You are the parent, which means your child's Apple ID can be controlled by you.
Right. And I think
And you
that's
now
fairly
have-
obvious of the machinations that we went through setting up Forbes on our family account were extreme, but that was one piece that didn't baffle us as we set it up.
Right. So as a parent over a managed Apple ID, you now have some more controls, and there's now new functionality to allow you to add an age range for your kid, which will allow your child's Apple ID to tell apps the age band of your child without revealing their actual personal information, like their actual date of birth. And that API lets developers allow the same app to present different content and or features depending on the age of the child. So instead of having to have your whole app ruled out of being allowed for kids, as a developer, you can now play clever and say that if there's a child using the app, this feature is gone. And then Apple will certify you because you're still age appropriate. You're just many ages appropriate.
Huh. That's cool. And that's by app.
It's by app, yeah. So hypothetically, this is very important for content apps. Like, is Netflix in an age range? Well, no, it depends on what you watch. So with this
Right.
API, the developers can take the age hint from the user account and project that into the app and then only show kids appropriate content. And hypothetically, if Google decide to adopt the API, which I don't believe they have yet, they could collapse their their YouTube for Kids app back into one single app, because the same app could behave differently depending on whether it was a kid or not.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. And then there's just some other tweaks to make it a little bit easier to onboard your kids and so forth. So that workflow that you had so much trouble with, in theory, I don't know if the aspects that baffled you have been fixed, but aspects of it that have baffled other people have been fine-tuned.
Okay, good. I'm thinking that these changes to be seen for parental controls, it's possible all of the devices need to be on 26, because I'm on 26
Yes.
and I'm one of the parentals of Forbes, but I don't see anything in there. But then again, I'm not finding parental controls at all, so I'm probably looking in the wrong place. But hey, it's not my job.
Right.
He's got a parental.
Yes,
She can do
you
it.
have. You are now relieved of those duties, having done plenty of hard work to earn that.
Actually, I have parentals, or I have children, but not this kind.
They go woof
Yeah. Well,
or
no,
meow.
Lindsay and Kyle still exist.
Well, that's true, but technically speaking, they're not your legal responsibility anymore, right? If they screw up, it's their problem.
Right. Well, very good. That's good, because I know people have complained about parental controls and how they work or don't work. Hopefully they're working better.
Yeah, it's definitely not worse. It's definitely progress. Whether it's perfect, I won't comment on, but it seems positive to me.
Good.
Another small but positive development is in how File Vault works in macOS Tahoe. So File Vault gives you full disk encryption, which is very powerful for protecting your data if your device gets stolen, and you really do want it. But obviously, if you forget your password, you lose your data. So whenever you have full disk encryption, you're interested in recovery. What do I do with the recovery key? And because File Vault is quite old, it hadn't yet adopted Apple's latest power tools, features, whatever, right? It hadn't quite caught up with Apple's state of the art. And so you were presented with the option to manage your own key, and you were presented with the key precisely once because the key wasn't stored anywhere, so the OS could never show it to you again. So if you didn't capture it when you were setting up the Mac and you had unticked the box to say send a copy to Apple, well, it's gone now.
Right. wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, so don't forget your password, right? You could disable File Vault with your password and then start over again and make your Mac decrypt everything and then re-encrypt. You don't want to do that.
Right.
The other option you had was to let Apple mine the key, but that option was added before Apple implemented end-to-end encryption for sensitive data like your health data and your iCloud keychain, which meant that Apple had the key not end-to-end encrypted, so they could be forced to hand it over by subpoenas, or if they were ever hacked, they could lose it. And so a lot of people were nervous about it and felt the need to manage the key themselves, which was obviously dangerous. Well, Apple now have full end-to-end encryption for our health data and our keychain, so they have done the obvious, and they have plumbed the recovery key into the iCloud keychain, which has two
Okay.
advantages. It's end-to-end encrypted, so it's safe, and it can show it to you in the Passwords app anytime you need it. So if you want to also keep it in your password manager, well, you can.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Now, dumb question. This does mean while you can now forget the password to your Mac, don't
Mhm.
forget your Apple account password.
Or at least not at the same time.
Yes, you could do them independently, but
Just not at the
take
same
your
time.
time, do them one at a time, right? Now, there's one other thing that's interesting about File Vault. I have heard from sources that File Vault was turned on with Tahoe being upgrading to Tahoe for people who had it turned off.
Anecdotally, there are people saying that, and anecdotally, there are people disagreeing. I don't know.
Okay.
I left it out of the show notes because when I went to find a source for what I had heard, which is the same as what you had heard, what I discovered was confusion instead of facts. And I went, yeah, let's walk away.
Yeah. The source I have is somebody who's very active in Leo Laporte's community, but he's a guy I knew in real life at work, and he's not a dope. You know, he's a smart guy. So I don't know, but again, it is anecdata at best.
It may be a bug, because what I found was a Reddit thread with really confusing people going, it happened to me, and people going, don't disbelieve you, but it didn't happen to me.
Right. Oh, that can't possibly be any bugs in these operating systems.
No, Alison, you haven't found any and haven't warned people that maybe this might be one to slow down on.
Yeah. I'm not running Tahoe on this machine yet, by the way.
No, neither am I on this podcasting machine because I like to let Rogue Amoeba give me the all clear before I touch anything.
Yeah, they're pretty close to all clear. There's one weird sideload bug in Sound Source, but it's easily avoidable. It's mismatching of bit rates or sample rates, one of those. Yeah, Steve just pressed update on everything. I was like, what? So we're going to find out tonight during the live show how well that worked.
Well, at least it's his Mac for sharing it with the live audience, which is nice to have. Your Mac is vital.
Exactly.
Okay, we're not done with nice little improvements. A real danger in the cybersecurity world these days is SIM jacking, where someone takes over your cell phone number and therefore they can receive SMS-based multi-factor authentication. And one of the advantages of eSIMs is that you don't have a physical card, but one of the disadvantages of eSIMs is that in theory someone could actually yoink the eSIM. So instead of registering a fake SIM on your phone number, they could just take your SIM, transfer out the eSIM.
Right. I think that happened to listener Lynn, by the way.
Oh, well, there we go. QED. Apple have raised the shields on that a little bit. In order to transfer out an eSIM, you must use biometric authentication. No fallback to password. It must be a biometric to release the eSIM.
So does that make it impossible? I mean, unless your phone's been stolen?
Or unless you are so tricked that you do it. Right? If someone tricks you into doing it, yeah, nothing can prevent you doing what you're allowed to do, but it does raise the bar. It stops malware doing it.
That's fantastic.
Yes. Yeah. And then the last one is an example of what we've seen a lot in browser makers, where they add a new feature they think will boost privacy, but they're afraid it might have some side effects, and so they don't want to roll it out to everyone. So what they do is they put it in their private browsing mode, because people in private browsing mode tolerate the odd bit of weirdness. That way they effectively have a beta audience, right?
Okay.
And they leave it there for a year or for a cycle, whatever a cycle is. And then assuming they rub off all the rough edges, it goes into the real product, into every tab. And that has now happened with the machine learning-based privacy protections in Safari. So they were initially on by default for private windows, but off by default for normal windows. And now they are on by default everywhere. And so the idea is that you have machine learning which can find even new trackers faster than a human continuing to put stuff on a block list.
Oh, okay. So this is for anti-tracking?
Mostly anti-tracking, so it's a privacy protection rather than a security protection.
Okay. That's fantastic.
Yes, and I value my
that's
privacy.
using machine learning for good.
Precisely, and there's a lot of that. Like I keep telling people, yes, there are problems. There are also really good things, and with my work hat on, I adore the help I get from machine learning in cybersecurity. It makes my life so much easier.
Okay, cool.
Yes, and I'm the goodie, by the way, just in case anyone's wondering. I'm not hacking people. I'm doing the opposite.
Right. It's good to be clear on that.
Right. Action alerts. Apple, yes, they gave us new shiny. Yes, it has nice new features. But the old operating systems also got a bunch of patches. In fact, when I say the old operating systems, I mean older than you think. Right back to iOS 16 and macOS Sonoma.
That's
because
fantastic.
0 day. So patchy, patch.
So Sonoma's 2 back, is that right? Sonoma, Sequoia, Tahoe?
I think so. I get very confused.
There are people who can recite them in order. I am not one of them.
I was okay while there were cats and there weren't that many of them, but there's been a lot of them now.
I could do Sierra and High Sierra. I knew the order on those two.
And lion and mountain lion.
Exactly. Those two. I'm out right now. Puma might have been one of the early ones. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing I really liked is with iOS 26, the button to update to iOS 18.7 is much bigger and more obvious than the update to iOS 26. And I think that's as it should be.
Yes.
Right. It can change later, sure. But
yes, and it will.
For civilians, I want them pressing that 18.7. I don't want them to miss it. And I've seen civilians who I wouldn't normally think would be astute enough to be even doing security updates ask, do I have to go to that or can I push this 18.7 button first?
Yeah. No, Apple have learned actually because, like you say, the default, the obvious button, the one grabbing your attention is the don't upgrade. And that's how it should be. And then in 6 months' time, I'm perfectly happy with Apple flipping the logic. But give it some time. Those bugs we mentioned.
I think with macOS, they didn't have it that way in the past. And like Steve's dad did a big upgrade. And we're like, he's the last person we want to have do a big update. Not that anything's going to go wrong, but that it's upsetting to him when things change significantly without somebody, explaining what's going on to him. So I think this is a good change.
Especially this year when the visual changes are so striking.
Exactly. I mean, if his printer comes out of his dock, that is a 5-alarm fire. We don't know why he needs his printer in his dock. There's no reason to have it there, but if it's not there, man, that's an emergency 911 call to find out how to get it back. And it seems to happen pretty often.
I keep it there all the time because then you can drag and drop emails and PDFs straight onto the printer and never have to open an app. Just it's like dragging it to the trash, only it comes out of your printer.
Yeah, I don't drag anything to the trash. I hit Command Delete. It's too slow to grab a cursor. Yeah. Anyway.
Cool. Google Chrome users. 6th 0 day of the year. Patchy, patch. And OnePlus are a phone manufacturer who are very popular in Europe because in a lot of European countries, you're not allowed to bundle a phone with a contract. So this whole thing of getting your iPhone on contract isn't allowed and iPhones are expensive. So the OnePlus is quite popular because it's a physically very nice phone and it competes well with Apple's devices and to some extent anyway. But they have a nasty boo-boo. And it is the word I dislike most? Unpatched flaw in OnePlus
Ooh.
phones lets rogue apps access your text messages.
And we don't mean rogue amoeba. We mean rogue in the bad way.
No. Yes, we
Yeesh.
do. So if you are a OnePlus user, you need to keep a good eye out for updates whenever they stop being unpatched. And you may want to have a thought about what's in your Messages app right now. Because hypothetically, if you install something from an app store, it could be malicious and steal your texts.
Yikes.
Not good. Yeah. Right, still with our hat on, worthy warnings time. It is a good time to remind everyone that as much fun as generative AI is, the letting it tell you things aspect is not without its pitfalls, but that's not likely to cause you really major grief. The bit that's likely to cause you really major grief is when you give it the power to do things, like to access your
Agentic
Gmail.
AI.
Yeah, and some agentic is different to others. If you allow it to turn off your lights because you have accessibility needs, that's very, very different to allowing it to send and receive email through Gmail, or to create and destroy files on your G Drive or your OneDrive or your Dropbox, right? What you let that agentic AI do really changes how bad bugs are. And to underline this point, it's now been fixed, but there was a 0-click flaw that would leak your Gmail to the OpenAI deep research agent, because you would put a prompt into an email. So you would send someone an email, and the prompt would mean that the next time that person sent the agentic AI into their inbox, it would take over the agentic AI and make it exfiltrate all of your emails.
So, was this something, a hack that somebody created, or just an accidental thing? Oh, it was a hack. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. This is what I say, right? In the early days of IoT, we would tell people it's a great place to play, but be careful. And now with Thread and Matter and stuff, I can tell my family and completely non-techie people, yeah, have fun. Just look for that little logo, right? Either the HomeKit logo or the Matter logo, and you're grand. We're not there yet on this AI stuff. We're still in that early stage, that Wild West stage. So be careful. In case, for some reason, you're still using LastPass, I might suggest maybe don't. Now, this latest story isn't LastPass's fault, but I still can't resist reminding people that LastPass have blotted their copybook really quite badly. Anyway, LastPass are doing the right thing and warning people that there are fake LastPass apps sitting in places like GitHub. Now, they are knocking them down as quickly as they appear, but it's a game of whack-a-mole, and there are people being hacked, so beware.
Why would that only be happening to LastPass and not what Bitwarden is it called, and 1Password?
Fashion?
Why would it only be them? I guess.
Misfortune. Like, attackers get these fashions, right? They get these little trends that they latch onto for a while, and right now it's them. There's no reason it can't be someone else next week, but right now it's them.
Okay.
Now, if you are on LinkedIn, I'm going to flag something to you that's getting a lot of people very exercised on the internet. LinkedIn are going to train their AI with 2 decades of your public data, the stuff you're publishing on LinkedIn. You can stop it if you like. My reaction was, but it's public data on the internet. Isn't it in every LLM already?
Yeah.
This is just Microsoft saying, do you mind if we use it legitimately for our one?
And giving you an option to tell you they're doing it and saying you can opt out.
Yeah. It's like, wait, okay, if you want to opt out, by all means do, but it's public data. I'm sure it's in everyone else's
feels
model.
Silly doing that, going, well, okay, well, we can ask them, but, everybody else already has it.
Yeah, so I don't think there's any reason to get exercised. I certainly couldn't be bothered saying no, but who am I to tell you what to do, right? They're nice enough to ask. If you'd like to give them the answer no, you can.
Okay.
Right, notable news. Again, we front weight these with the bad news so that we can feel happier as we get later in the show. So the first thing is we have some new reporting explaining why, despite the fact that the cell carriers are actually getting a lot better about blocking malicious text messages with, what were those two new protocols that were forced on all the American carriers last year? They had silly names that rhymed with each other. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Don't remember.
The point is, they're actually doing the right thing. And yet, the wave of malicious SMS messages is not abating. Why? The answer is because the entire GSM network is laden with technical debt because it's old and it doesn't have modern encryption. There are people with backpacks going around. Those backpacks are fake cell phone towers, so they get to inject SMS messages into every phone within range without ever going through a carrier because the phones think they're real part of the cellular network. So they're just bypassing all the new security with a backpack. And they're wandering around. New York City is being targeted heavily, as are large swathes of the United Kingdom. So that's how. And the advice is simple. Still consider every piece of information in every green bubble, or every SMS message if you're using a different phone that's not an iPhone. Consider it all to be suspect, because there is no reason to assume it's legitimate.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you said it's in the UK, but your notes say it's also on the rise in the US. So yay.
Yeah, it's currently worse here. But again, there's no reason for the trend not to spread. Right? It's just we're first this time. Okay, good news. If you're on the hunt for a privacy-preserving secure VPN that has a business model that you know isn't out to steal you, they don't have all the false incentives, and you'd like to take your business outside the US because you don't live in the US, Proton VPN has always been on my list of things to consider because they get externally audited. They do it every year. They have just passed with flying colors for the 4th year in a row.
Oh, nice.
So their promises are verified. Tick.
Excellent. Excellent.
Now, I have a little top tip for you. It's not really a palate cleanser because it will be far too nerdy, but it is a top tip. So I regularly tell people about how much I love the fact that Have I Been Pwned provide an API for people who sign up. So there's different packages available depending on whether you're like, a family or small business. I think it's $5 a year. Or if you're a really big organization, it's a few thousand a year. But regardless, you can sign up and then you get access to their API. And I love their API. It's very powerful. But it's not accessible to muggles, to regular folk, really. It's not difficult. It's just, well, how do you get started? How do I say to someone, oh yeah, just use the API? Right.
Right.
Well, Have I Been Pwned have started to recognize and address that problem. They have released the first of what they promise is going to be a suite of demo videos. So the first HIBP demo is out, and it is dedicated to querying the API.
Huh. So I still don't know what you would query the API to do.
Well, so instead of you having to go to the website and check each email address on your domain to see if any of them have been pwned since the last time you checked each email address on the domain, you can use the API, say once a week with a cron job, to just go and fetch you the latest bad news. And so if you're representing a large organization, it's actually very powerful to be able to proactively know that you have these 5 people have been caught up in a password breach. And maybe you might want to proactively make them reset the password in your organization in case they're the kind of human who reuses passwords.
Okay, so this is more for enterprise sort of situations, even tiny enterprise, not just, me.
It kind of depends, right? So now I'm not saying every family's like this, but our family all share an email domain which is based on our surname. And therefore I'm sort of like the cybersecurity person for the family in a very literal sense. And so it's actually really convenient for me to sign the family up for this API, which I have done, and it allows me to proactively reach out and say, yeah, dear brother, you might want to be a little bit careful. I hope you haven't reused your password from Boopity Boop because it's all over the place now. It's very useful.
Okay. Cool.
Like I say, your
But it's
mileage
fun
may
to-
vary. Yeah.
Right.
And then interesting insights. We have a big entry from you, and then I have a little one to tag on.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to try to get all the way through this, but I've been having to clear my throat a lot, so I may mute all of a sudden. We'll see how I can do. OpenAI released a research paper that they did where they admit that AI hallucinations are mathematically inevitable. They're not engineering flaws. So I'm going to read you 4 little short paragraphs in here, being redundant, little and short, and that really, I think, pull out exactly how crazy this is. Here we go. OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, acknowledged in its own research that large language models will always produce hallucinations due to fundamental mathematical constraints that cannot be solved through better engineering, making a significant admission from one of the AI industry's leading companies. These are separate paragraphs that are not all run together, so I picked and chose the fun ones. The researchers demonstrated their findings. Remember, the researchers are OpenAI. So they demonstrated their findings using state-of-the-art models, including those from OpenAI's competitors. When asked, how many Ds are in the word DeepSeek, DeepSeek, the DeepSeek V3 model with 600 billion parameters returned 2 or 3 in 10 independent trials, while Meta AI and Claude 3.7 Sonnet performed similarly, including answers as large as 6 and 7.
Wow.
Now, OpenAI's own advanced reasoning models actually hallucinated more frequently than simpler systems. The company's O1 reasoning model hallucinated 16% of the time when summarizing public information, while newer models, O3 and O4 Mini, hallucinated 33% and 48% of the time, respectively. A third to a half, okay? Unlike human intelligence, it lacks the humility to acknowledge uncertainty, said Neil Shah, VP for Research and Partner at Counterpoint Technologies. When unsure, it doesn't defer to deeper research or human oversight. Instead, it often presents estimates as facts.
Amen. That last sentence is the bit I try to tell my family all the time. It will talk absolute garbage with equal certainty and assertiveness as its most correct answers.
Yeah. And there's people who, I have friends who are intelligent who send me, well, this proves that what I was trying to tell you was right, and it'll be from an AI. It's like, yeah, okay, sure.
No, I think the
you
worst
might
one
be
I had,
right.
I had a family member say, yeah, I asked it for some health advice, and I immediately started to cringe. And it sounded very certain. It's like, yes, that is exactly why you do not ask.
So if the better models are hallucinating 33 and 48% of the time, there are people who believe saying, "Are you sure?" is useful, which I have tried to do. And almost always when I look at something, I'm going, that doesn't sound right. I say, "Are you sure?" And it'll go, "Oh no, my bad. That was wrong." But maybe that's also got a 33 to 48% hallucination rate, right?
Well, it would. And also, given that the models tend to like to placate you, are they actually rethinking, or are they just going, oh, no, the user wants me to say I was wrong. Okay, I was wrong.
Well, I keep saying I'm going to do this, and I haven't done the test yet, is wait till it tells me something correct, and then tell it it's wrong, and see if it'll come back. Actually, I have had it go, no, I'm sure of this one. I have seen that, now they think about it. But bring up medical, Bill Gates said that his recommendation for one of the best uses of AI is when you get a doctor's report that's just full of technical jargon you don't understand, upload it to an AI and ask it to summarize it for you and explain it to you.
You see, that's very different to asking it to tell you advice, right?
Correct. But still, the first thing he's doing is taking a confidential medical report and throwing it up on the open.
Wow, this is where it depends which AI you use, right? So
Sure.
We're going to talk on a chit chat across the pond shortly about why I have chosen a specific large language model for my work, because one of the things it promises you is that your prompt is never saved anywhere or never leaked to anyone. And that's one of the reasons that Apple Intelligence, while being less capable, is dramatically more secure because Apple literally destroyed the RAM that once held your prompt.
Okay. Well, you could also run it locally.
Well, that's the other way, right? Don't trust anyone. Do it yourself.
Right. So anyway, I will keep this this link and just start sending it to anybody who sends me anything that they want proven facts. And I use it all the time. Use it for
Right.
lots of things. But you got to just assume.
Yeah, it's like
there's a good shot it's wrong.
a hammer is only useful in certain situations for certain things. It's still bloody useful.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And AI is
Right.
only useful for certain things in certain situations, but it's bloody useful in those situations.
Put a big old skeptic hat on.
Yes, precisely. It is a tool. Pros and cons. Right. I have mentioned to you just in this very episode even that AI and cybersecurity is not a yes-no. It's not a simple good, evil, end of the world, answer to life, the universe, and everything. It's complicated. And the Big Technology Podcast is one of the more thoughtful tech podcasts. They're hour-long episodes, deep conversations. And the guest is the CEO of a AI cybersecurity company, or rather a cybersecurity company that leans into AI. And it's their job to understand the risks and the potential rewards, both sides. How does AI help the defender? How does AI help the attacker? And how is AI itself a vulnerability? And the conversation actually starts with a really basic point I think we all forget. AI is software. It is built on things like Postgres databases and Python language. There's vulnerabilities in the bloody software, let alone what the software does.
Okay. Yeah. Case in point in what we were just talking about, right?
Yeah. So the conversation is an hour long. It covers all the aspects and it gives you a really good feeling of, okay, so here are the opportunities, here are the risks. And like I said, it's not fantastic or terrible. It's yes and.
The title's a little clickbaity. Is generative AI a cybersecurity disaster waiting to happen? The answer will surprise you. No, it didn't say that.
It didn't, but it may as well have. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the people who write headlines and titles are the people who make content. I know that I know from some people who write for magazines that they often don't get to choose the headline for their own pieces, and they often get very annoyed.
Yeah. I would assume they did not in this case, but
Yeah.
still, that I would not necessarily have clicked on it because of that. I might have gone, but that sounds really interesting. I'll check that one out.
Excellent.
Well,
Right, so we don't have a traditional palette cleanser, but I think we've given people some interesting stuff all the same.
I think so. I think those last two articles count.
Yes. Right. Well then, until next time, folks, remember what you have to do. Stay patched so you stay secure.
Well, as Kevin says in the live chat room, liar, liar, pants on fire. I just went back. Actually, Steve asked in the live chat room how on earth we managed to not get messed up with the time zones, with the time changing in the two different regions. And I went and looked it up, and I lied to Bart. We're definitely going to get hit with this. So nobody tell him. We'll just leave that to little discovery of his own. But anyway, that is going to wind us up for this week. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeet.com anytime you like? I love to get emails from people. If you have a question or a suggestion, just send it on over. And remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. You can follow me on Mastodon at podfeet.com/Mastodon, where I'm pretty darn active. If you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, you could go to podfeet.com/YouTube. If you want to join the conversation, you could join our Slack community at podfeet.com/Slack. Go in there and talk to me and all the other lovely NoSilicast ways. It's just active enough, It's not a lot of chatter, but just enough chatter. You could support the show, like our 2022 and forward patrons, by going to podfeet.com/Patreon. If you want to do a one-time donation, go to podfeet.com/donate. You can Apple Pay or a credit card, whatever you like. No account required. Or you can go through podfeet.com/PayPal if you're of that persuasion. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, we had Sienna and Forbes on the live show today. I mean, you just can't beat having a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old on the show. Head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic NoSilicastaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed.